Welcome to another episode of India-Japan podcast series with Bridging Indo-Pacific and Africa. I'm your host, Dr. Ulupi Bora. Today we'll explore India-Japan relationship beyond Indo-Pacific. We discuss on a region which is shaping global strategic and economic order, and that is Africa. So Japan has initiated its footprints in Africa, and India has already initiated its developmental engagements. At the same time, we see the emerging geopolitics of infrastructure development, maritime security, critical minerals, and so I believe that this conversation is going to be very timely today. And I welcome today Dr. Samir Bhattacharya. He is an Associate Fellow at Observer Research Foundation, who works extensively on geopolitics with particular reference to Africa in the changing global order. He has traveled widely across the African continent and writes regularly for national and international platforms on Africa's strategic transformation. Dr. Samir, I welcome you to CENJOWS.
Thank you, Dr. Bora. I'm very happy to be here and discuss this timely topic with you.
So, Dr. Samir, my first question is, how do you define Japan's engagement in Africa, particularly in context of India-Japan strategic convergence and the evolving geopolitical competition spanning the Indo-Pacific and Africa?
Okay, thank you. So, you see, Japan's connection with Africa, it gets less credit than it deserves. Japan's engagement, when we think of it, today when you see all the foreign players are quoting Africa, you see there is a China-Africa summit, you see France-Africa summit, you see India-Africa summit. In last few years, we had very new emerging players, like we had South Korea-Africa summit, we had Saudi-Africa summit, which never happened. Then Russia-Africa summit. Who was the first country to start this Africa Plus One summit? It was Japan in 1993. And Japan's relation with Africa, it goes back even before, during 1970-73, when there was this oil crisis, and Japan wanted to explore beyond its immediate neighborhood. That is when Japan actually started diplomatic relationship with African continent, and that was also the time when Japan was facing a little problem in the South Asia, particularly in Indonesia, when there was some anti-Japan protest. Japan thought that they realized the need to go beyond Indo-Pacific, go beyond their immediate neighborhood, and so Japan started exploring Africa. Now in Africa, Japan's engagement, I would say it is based on three things. One is quality, second is trust, and the third one is non-interference. So, for example, when we talk about Africa, we think of China. Now, the comparison between China and Japan is that whatever Japan does, it ensures that there is a quality. So that is what differentiates Japan with most other players. Second is the trust. Japan also works as demand-based approach, what Africa needs accordingly, and also the non-interference. Japan does not try to interfere in their political issues. Now coming to India, you see India is also in the middle of this geopolitical churn that is going on, and for example, although India has just signed the Trump tariff, India has signed the deal with EU and US, but we never know how this volatile geopolitics. India also needs partners, and India's activity in Africa is already very wide reached. It goes actually much before Japan or any other countries, which is very evident if you look at the diaspora, Indian diaspora in Africa. So it always makes sense to partner with like-minded countries, and I think India and Japan makes a very good partner to work on Africa on various domains where there are common interests, where there is the convergence of interest.
Exactly. Thank you so much for this, very well explained. And what you have touched is, about the new players. Now, South Korea is coming up. But yes, Japan's role, in the early 90s is also commendable, especially in Africa, when actually nobody was thinking probably at that point of time.
Very much so. Very
Yes.
much so. I mean, in 1993, who was doing Africa Summit? It was first Japan.
Exactly.
Tokyo International, the conference, which is now known as TICAD.
Exactly. So thank you, Dr. Samir. My next question is, what are the key driving factors behind Japan's Africa policy, and how it intersects with India's interests in the region?
Okay. So I just mentioned that Japan started its approach to Africa when there was this oil crisis.
Yes.
Today, for example, we are living in the fourth industrial revolution, and the industrial revolution will happen using minerals, critical minerals. Africa stands with those critical minerals. Then Japan is USA, the way US pressured India, US also pressured Japan. Japan also needs allies. So Japan very recently, in fact last year, Japan is an industrialized nation. It is a manufacturing nation. It requires resources to build. Now last year itself China put a ban on, and Japan is very dependent on China for its rare earth minerals and critical minerals. Now last year China suddenly put a ban on their rare earth mineral export, and then Japan was at loss. So Japan understood that if they want to ensure their production, then they need to diversify their supply chain.
Absolutely.
And so I think the primary driver that Japan has for Africa is to ensure, it's a very pragmatic approach. It requires the resources to continue its industrialization, and it should be in a way that is win-win, which should also benefit Africa. Second is also, one factor was there that in the 1970s and all, when this Cold War period was going, Japan was booming. Japan's industrialization was booming a lot, and Japan needed places where it can invest its surplus income. So Africa appeared to be a very interesting area where Japan can invest. Then the third issue, which is very important, is that Japan's population, it's very aging population, and declining and aging population. And if you go to Africa, Africa is the youngest continent. The median age is below 20 years. Can you believe it? So Japan requires this amount of the people who will work for Japan, in different field. So whether it's for Japan's healthcare, it's for education, or it's for their industries, Japan requires the labor, and I think Africa is going to be the next generation labor force. Fourth is market. Japan requires, I told that Japan is a manufacturing nation. It requires new emerging markets where it can sell its products. And Africa, look at Africa, its population is today 1.5 billion, and it is by 2050, it will be 50% of Earth's population. I mean, even Africa beats India by a little bit today, but I think India's population growth is also going to slow down, and Africa is going to become the huge market, and the youth population means there is a demand for technology, there is a demand for digital. So these are the areas where Japan is strong. So Japan is very motivated to work in these domains in Africa. And again, coming to India, these are also the areas where India is interested. India's population is also, compared to Europe, compared to US, compared to Japan, India's population is also young. India is also a very, we call it, if you forget the Silicon Valley, India is also called startup nation. India is also exploring partnership with different countries. Now Prime Minister Modi has announced Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar Bharat sounds nice, but to manufacture you need resources, you need minerals, which India does not have. India is also dependent on a lot of minerals from outside. So India also needs to secure its mineral supply value chain. So I think areas, this India and Japan, these areas really converge, and I think two countries already we are working together. In the last year 2025 August, there was India and Japan signed some joint vision for sustainability, and I think this is just the beginning, and we should work together going forward in every region, particularly in Africa.
Oh yes, Dr. Samir, you have really touched on very significant aspects. What I have understood is probably we have a lot of commonalities now.
Exactly.
Starting from declining population, that could be one of the strategic pillars, and reducing the reliance on one particular country when we talk
Correct.
about rare earth or critical minerals.
Correct.
So strengthening that supply chain is very, very important, where both India is also focusing, Japan is also focusing. Okay, thank you. My next question is related to TICAD 9, which you have been extensively working on also and
Sure.
discussing on. So, do you see this as a continuity of Japan's Africa outreach, or is something new? And in context of India, I want to know that where is India? Where does India feature in this framework of TICAD 9?
Okay, so I would say TICAD 9 is at the same time continuation, and it is also something new. So see, when 1993 TICAD was evolved, it was really a government to government initiative. It was really an aid-based approach where Africa needs aid. Many African countries were suffering, and particularly from IMF, World Bank, and all this, in monetary institutions. So Africa needed some support, external support, and Japan provided that support. But over the period of time, things evolved. I think one biggest breakthrough that TICAD witnessed was the 2016 TICAD, which was held under the leadership of Shinzo. And during that time, Prime Minister Abe, what he really changed is he transformed this aid-based model from this aid-based model to business model, commercial model. So that was the time when he introduced many business to business, and a lot of people to people connections arrived. Lot of venture capitalists, they started entering in African market. But again, it was particularly after his demise, the things were slowing down. But I think in last 2-3 years, if you see how China is getting aggressive, it's ever increasingly aggressive. And look at what Donald Trump is doing. He is pushing, I would say he's pushing other countries towards the opposite axis. So in this situation, Japan needed to, announce something very big, very grand, and that is how TICAD 9 happened. And you will see, while everything was very similar, this time 33 state of the heads were in Japan this time in Yokohama. Then there were presence of 44 African countries out of 54, and there were probably more than 100 MOUs were signed. There were many new announcements, there requires, those projects are probably not big ticket projects like Chinese projects, but they were indeed some projects which would be giving, which would touch the last mile. So for example, I'll give you a few examples like universal healthcare. Japan is a country which is very interested or very invested in the health. And when President Trump said that there is no more US aid, then the biggest victim of that US aid cut was health sector in Africa. And now I think with Japan's increasing investment in Africa, this is going to be a very beneficial for Japan. Beneficial for Africa, and this is one area where India is also invested. India is called, for example, India is called the pharmaceutical capital of the world. India's generic medicine is saving so many lives in Africa. During the COVID times, India's vaccine Maitri was in when it was in full display, when developed countries were doing vaccine apartheid. India was actually producing vaccine and gifting to African countries. So you see, healthcare is one area where India and Japan can very well collaborate after this Ticket 9. Then there is another area which is education. India's collaboration with Africa is very focused on capacity building on Africa. In last few years, India has opened one IIT in Zanzibar. India has opened one national law university in Uganda. India is also opening another IIT in Nigeria. And Indian education, every year so many African students come to India.
Yes.
The demand for Indian education, which is value for the money, which is not very expensive, but it's good quality, it's very high demand, and so is Japan. So I think Japan and India can collaborate on education. Then there are many areas of collaboration. I said about the mineral resource extraction, but there is also not just mineral resource extraction. Japan also cares about the sustainability.
Yeah.
So, for example, it depends on how you are extracting those minerals compared to many other countries. Japan, when it is doing the mining, it ensures that there is a sustainability aspect. It is environment friendly, and these are all very converges with India's way of working. You see, so I think there are a lot of areas of convergence that India and Japan can find post this TICAD 9. Basically, what I think is India and Japan, they are complementary. So Japan has lot of technology, lot of although it's a declining economy, it's not, Japan's economy is not as big as it was 10 years ago, but still it is an economy which is flourishing, and India is also an emerging country, and India also want to invest in Africa. So these are the like-minded countries. India and Japan share a very much historic bond, and I think these two countries can work and should work actually going forward.
Yes, Dr. Samir, you're absolutely right. You mean to say that there are a lot of potentials we can explore many areas.
Correct.
So quickly, I will ask you the last question, which you have almost touched on, critical minerals. So in that sector, Dr. Samir, just tell me how realistically we can work together, especially when we talk about the joint initiative or co-funding in the critical mineral sector, in order to strengthen the supply chain. Very quickly, you can short.
Okay. So see, I'll just tell you. For example, there are critical minerals which are most of these critical minerals they are found in Africa, but they are extracted and processed in China. So Africa really lacks in the value chain. Africa needs to move up in the value chain. So Japan wants to, for Japan very recently they have announced this Nakala corridor, which is again which will connect the landlocked countries Zambia and Malawi to the coast. So these are the when instead of, I think India and Japan should work together. Instead of using the same extractive model, they should work on capacity building, they should work on value addition in Africa, local value addition. And one problem that Japan faces is that, as I said, Japan's presence in Africa is very minimal. Japan is diaspora. You don't find Japanese diaspora in Africa. So why not Indian diaspora is present there? India is very well connected. Why not Japan? We should piggyback each other. Japan should help. Even Nakala corridor. Nakala corridor is from the African coast. It will come to Japan. It's a long way, and India is in the middle. Why not use India to even for station your ship for a few days.
Absolutely.
And India can also, there is no today there is no direct shipping line between India and India and many African countries. So Japan can help in all those areas. So I think, and also I spoke about this sustainability aspect. I think that is also one area where India and Japan can work together. Africa needs, if you want to add value in Africa, they need training, they need capacity building. India and Japan should work together to build capacity of Africans, African miners, African students. I think these are the areas where we should work together instead of just going extractive model.
Thank you, Dr. Samir, so much for these very insightful perspectives. So to my analysis, what I have understood from this conversation, that we have a lot of potentials where we can collaborate.
Sure.
And we are not, I would say, not just partners, but natural partners we could be. Because whatever challenges we have today, or whatever, upcoming threats we see in terms of supply chain, and I think those areas could be mitigated with a stronger bond and connection between the two countries. And towards the end, I feel that Africa and Indo-Pacific are two interconnected theaters of strategic competition and cooperation at the same time.
Exactly.
And with this, I would like to end our conversation today. But stay tuned and stay connected with us for more India-Japan related discussions, and across new frontiers will come up with more. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Bora.